stop here. This is the place.
One of the things that I love is that two films idea of your life. And there's two stories you can tell. One that is safe and full of regret, and one that is risky and full of pride and joy. This place seems to be a stepping stone across that bridge that is so scary to walk across.
Peace, everybody. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Mar, for that amazing introduction. Yeah, let's get started. So I greet you with peace, peace to the Creator, peace to the ancestors, peace to all of the brilliant minds present in this space. I'm going to be talking to you about, okay, when I first met Mar, I introduced myself as a filmmaker because that's what I was. That's what I thought I was going to be. That occupied all my time, all my creative thoughts was thought through cameras and lenses and storyboards and compositions that way. But now, however, when I introduce myself, I call myself a visual artist. So I'm going to talk about that transition because it all happened in the last 3 years. I'm from New Orleans, the greatest city on the planet. If you haven't visited, you should definitely come out, and you will also say this. I went to this art high school where I learned how to create visual arts. When I graduated, I was like, I'm done with art. I'm never going to pick up a paintbrush again. Because I learned how to do it, but I didn't learn why I was doing it. So I feel like I mastered the how. I was like, okay, I got that. Moving on. So the past 3 years really organically introduced me to the why. So I'm going to talk about that. So you said hit arrow twice? Okay, cool. All right, so in New Orleans, there's a space that, as we all know, experienced something almost 11 years ago that was very horrific. Wait. I'm going to be pausing throughout, y'all, so y'all got to bear with me. This is my first time explaining these 3 projects all at once, so we're going to do this. We're going to play jazz. We're going to play it by ear. So New Orleans is a space, experienced this big horrific event, Hurricane Katrina. The entire city was empty, right? I don't know many cities, current cities, that can share that story. They say that, you know what, there was a point in time when no one was here. Everyone left. And everyone had a reason why they returned. Stories are different, but everybody faced some sort of decision and said, you know what, I'm going back. So within this new landscape of what New Orleans looks like, there's a lot of spaces that are forgotten, a lot of spaces that are abandoned, a lot of spaces that are destroyed. 3 years ago, this particular space started to be present in my life. This was a former housing project called the Florida Housing Projects. As a filmmaker and a photographer, I often found myself in these spaces filming and taking photos. But there's one particular time when I went to this space, I started to notice graffiti and different street art that existed on a very small scale in this space, and it immediately broke these rules that I thought art had to abide by. This idea that here was these amazing pieces of work that no one would see, and you didn't really know who did it. And they say imitation is the highest form of flattery. So I started to go into these spaces and trying to, at first, recreate some of the graffiti I saw, doing the lettering and stuff like that. I was no good at it. And then somehow I was like, wait, but I know how to paint. So let me see if I can apply some of the things I used to know with paint with these spray cans. So the first time using spray paint, and I'm a filmmaker, so I document everything. There's always either somebody with me with a camera or myself filming. So this was all documented, me just in this space, painting on these walls for myself, really. It was just like this personal diary where I was just in this quiet moment that was disconnected from the rest of the city. And I would just be there painting people who I looked up to, ideas that I thought was important, and really in a way, just being true to myself, but also understanding that other people were going to see this because the people walked by. This was in the middle of a neighborhood that was trying to rebuild. So I wanted to also show images that they could relate to, and they could see that in these moments of struggle, there is triumph. So that was the common thread of some of the images. So ended up for like a month just constantly painting there, not telling anybody because I thought that I would get arrested. I thought that I would get in trouble because I'm legal gray area here. I'm kind of breaking and entering. But it's an abandoned space, wide open. It's protected by a gate, but still, I felt like if somebody got mad, their priorities was a little bit backwards. So a month straight, and I put this video together because I was like, okay, I'm done. And I was like, I'm not painting anymore, so now I can release this to the public and kind of put it on my YouTube channel and just kind of let people see what was happening. Maybe it'll inspire some people. I thought I was done with the project. It's like, cool. Moving on to the next thing. What ended up happening next was something I wasn't expecting. People watched the video, and their response, there was a wave of people who went to find this space, right? The first wave of people were all like visual artists. There were all these artists that felt that this was like an invitation for them to also come into this space and communicate. So it was all these artists in this space, and it was interesting that I would go there all the time and I would see many people there painting. Like, at least I walk in thinking, okay, this is my little spot, let me go through, and then there's like 10 people in there painting. But it was extremely dope because I found myself having conversations and really building with these people who I did not know beforehand, and we all got real tight. And it was really this organic idea that we didn't know what we were doing it, but it was this form of alchemy, this idea of transformation, and we were taking these lemons and in some way making lemonade. And everybody was being true to themselves in these rooms, beginning almost like miniature shrines to what these people believed in and what they hoped that these spaces could become. So that was the first wave of people, right? They were the artists. And it was cool. We had a good time. And I would be there with them painting, and the work started to become a little bit more intentional because we start thinking about, okay, what are we trying to say? Now that people are paying attention, what are we trying to say? So then we start thinking about, okay, what are some of the ideas of artistic healing, if you will, or what are some of the thoughts behind what's possible within these moments and within these spaces? So I called the project Project B as a way to kind of identify all the work, and it was about that moment because we knew it wasn't going to last. We knew at any moment we would get in trouble. And then people started just to show up, not people who wanted to paint, but just people who wanted to bear witness. And at great expense, too. They either hop a fence or they had to creep through a hole to see this work. And then it got to the point where I would go out there, and it wasn't artists that I would run into, but it was people with cameras and tourists and people who were from the neighborhood and people who came as far out just to see what was being talked about. And that was just an amazing experience. It was like, okay. And all this is happening every day. It's like there's no manifesto, there's no like plan that was put into place beforehand. Then the news started to pick up, and then I'm getting nervous now because it's like, okay, like literally every single news station in the city, they want to do an interview about the space and they want to talk about it. Front page of the paper. Like, I promise you, I've been doing work in New Orleans for a very long time, and I thought it was good work. And I've never, like, it was never on the paper, but this was on the front page of the paper, and it said, Project B is a public art masterpiece that I can't invite you to go see. So of course, people are going to read that and be like, oh, where? I'm going to see it. So then it got to the point where it was really getting out of hand. It was just like, because we knew as artists to kind of like hide and not be public and not park our car in front of the building. This was a group of teachers. It took my teachers to be in this space as educators. It's important we liberate ourselves in order to liberate. I don't need it. Today I was highly inspired by what I saw at Project B. So I'm witnessing what was happening and how people are starting to pay attention to what's going on, and I'm trying to make sense of it myself because here I am. I thought this was just for me. I thought this was something that I was just going to enjoy. This was one of my favorite excerpts from an article written about the space. It says, after taking a self-guided tour up and down the dilapidated stairwells, I sat down on a splintered stoop to rest. It was quiet with almost no breeze, just the sound of birdsong and distant rattle cans. I could hear a woman's voice slightly filtering down from a room upstairs where they were painting. A woman was saying, do you know who that is? She says this very slowly. Malcolm X, say that. A little boy who from the sound of it might be 2 years old tries. Maka, the mother says even slower this time, Malcolm X. Over many visits I can confirm that one was always hearing things like this at Project B. So I'm reading this and I'm like, whoa, something's happening here. And I'm kind of learning firsthand. And actually, this mother sent me this video. So I'm getting stuff like this in my inbox. It's about to play. Oh, wait. Does the audio work or no? Okay.
That has to be my favorite picture of him at Project B. Project B for me as an individual was a spirit uplift. It was definitely something great to be a part of. Thank you, Bmike. Say thank you, Bmike.
Thank you, Bmike.
So I'm getting videos like this in my email. I'm seeing messages like this. We really need to learn more about our history, is what a busload of children said after viewing Project B. Like, I literally walked in, there was a school bus there, and I'm like, yo, don't y'all realize that this is not legal? And of course, the more it got attention, the people who owned the property, Housing Authority of New Orleans, they didn't respond so favorably.
About to go see what they say.
This is going on in violation of criminal damage to property. You may have to take a trespass. Next time I see you, that's what you're going to jail for. Unless you get permission to be back here, you are criminal damage to property and you're trespassing. I've told you now, you'll be arrested for manslaughter and trespassing. Understand?
Yes, sir.
I guess we weren't even prepared for what this turned into, you know what I mean? So we just trying to, since it is what it is, it's like, okay, how can we navigate that in a way that still makes sense? But, you know what I mean? But I understand y'all doing y'all job, but we're not trying to make it harder for y'all at the same time. So.
Well, y'all not. Y'all making it harder for y'all and y'all people. It's not hard for us.
So the response after the attention was to basically make the property inaccessible. So they boarded it up with these huge iron boards, and it was definitely defeating in a way, because here it was, a bunch of people got together organically, and we felt ourselves, for the first time in a lot of these individuals' life, they felt that they were a part of something that was bigger than them. They felt that they were a part of something that was doing good, because I would go there and people in the community would be present and be like, I like what y'all doing over there. People who live directly across the street, people who had to deal with the fact that this property was a constant reminder of neglect, it was a constant reminder of being overlooked. And it started bringing awareness to me some of the things I've always knew. I'm always been a fan of history. James Baldwin said, artists are here to disturb the peace. And that quote lit up for me. It started to make sense what he was saying. And I tried to play the diplomatic route, and I met with the individuals involved. After we got kicked out, and it was like getting punched in the stomach and de-winded, because, like I said, we felt like we were part of something amazing, and it just was taken away from us right when it was about to develop into something beautiful. I sat with the people who, the president of Hanoi, and I met with him, and I'm like, yo, don't you understand what was happening? I was like, you know, can we talk about this? Can we work this? And he only insisted on being like the stern parent and being like, you could get arrested today still, so you should back off. And I'm like, but. And then I began to learn why they were so upset, because Hanoi had declared this property so in such a bad state that their employees had to wear hard hats and they couldn't walk in the property without it falling apart. And they did this in an attempt to get more FEMA money. And so here we were making them look like liars, because we were sitting there posting videos, painting on the walls and stuff. So I'm like, all right, cool, I feel what you're doing. So meanwhile, while these conversations are happening, there's this other space, 360-unit apartment complex, almost 4 times bigger than the one we were in before. And this is closer to where I currently live and where I was raised. And similar condition, similar level of disinvestment, or just this idea of being forgotten. And I found myself once again in this space. But from that point, it was just like I found therapy in just being in those spaces and being present and just listening and just not really needing people to see, but just being there. So I was in there for like a month, just constantly painting. I didn't want people to know, because I was afraid of the same thing might happen again, and I didn't want to get in trouble, because at this point I'm like in the hot seat. But I still felt this calling to want to do this, to want to create. And more so not just for me, but to create for the people who had to walk by that property every day, to in some way give them something that they could see themselves reflected in from a positive perspective. So in this space, like I said, for like a month, I'm sitting there painting, and I'm trying to figure out how to make it make sense. One of these particular moments, there's this quote that says, when you see boundaries as opportunities, the world becomes a limitless place. One of these particular moments, I'm sitting there painting, right? And then the owner of the property, I didn't know it then, but he walks in, and I'm like, there's one way in, one way out. I can't really like run, so I thought I could talk my way out of it. And he comes in and he's like, yo, are you the guy painting? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, are you this B guy? And he pointed around at everything. And I said, I don't know. He said, well, if you are, we're about to rebuild this property, and we want to include some of your work in the rebuilding. And I was like, oh, okay. He said, in the meantime, keep painting. If anybody stops you, tell them I gave you permission. So I'm like, oh, snap, green light. So I go back and I'm painting for a minute, and then I started to be reminded of some of the ideas that we had in the last project and what we hoped to pitch to the owners and what they said no to. So I came back to them. I said, yo, would you be willing to allow this space to be open to the public? Can we do something here? Took him a while. He gave me a long list of things that I had to secure, insurance and security and all this stuff. And I don't think he thought I could do it, but I immediately started calling in favors and asking for people help. And he said, all right, cool, you got one day. So I reached out to everybody who was a part of the first project, and we all came together and started cleaning up this space. We said, you know what, okay, we got permission now. We got the green light, and I guess I must have put a pause in there. I'm sorry, y'all. It's coming together. All right, cool. So we get together, start to work on it. We clean it out. These are volunteers. Nobody's getting a dime. And we're like, you know, we're going to transform this space. But unlike the last project, this space was occupied. Like the last project was relatively empty. Like there was no clothes we were walking over. There was nobody's living space that we were walking into. So with this, it became important for us to research what was happening before. I reached out to like 30 different artists, those who were part of the first project and others who were just observers from the side. We got some paint sponsored, but I gave them as much information I could about the space. We researched to find out that people were forcefully evicted after Katrina on the scale of disaster capitalism. The owners wanted to kick everybody out so they could get insurance money. So we had to figure out how we can include that truth into the space. And I told them it would be dishonest of us if we don't look at these walls not as blank canvases, but as canvases already filled with so much information. One of the individuals I look up to the most in history, Paul Robeson, said, artists are the gatekeepers of truth. And Dr. Cornel West said, a condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. So I told him it would be dishonest of us if we go into this space and not include the voices of those who had to live here, who had to endure in this space. So that's what we try to do as artists. We try to create in this space some level of truth and some level of confrontation, because I knew people were going to come from all over, and I wanted them to be reminded of where they stood, that this was a space you probably would not have visited had it not been for this art. And I wanted to remind them, this was an individual, a young man who had got murdered, a 15-year-old, shot in the streets of New Orleans with no notice, nobody knew why. He was a leader in his community. This is an artist named Roan from Australia. So it was artists from all over, mostly from New Orleans. And we completely transformed the space. Some of the messages intentional. Some of them, everybody interpreted the ideas in different ways. So in 15 days, from November 1st to November 15th, we completely transformed the space. Artistic alchemy, turning lead into gold. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So we put it out there that you can only visit this site for one day, and the newspaper ran an article, and we didn't know what to expect. And on that one day, over 2,500 people came. Well, we stopped counting at 25 because they had 2,500 stickers that we gave people when they came in. We ran out, and it was people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, people just coming to bear witness to what was happening. And people who used to live in the property, who became tour guides, saying, this is where I used to live, and this is where this happened. And then individuals who just wanted to document, because we knew this was ephemeral. We knew this wasn't going to last. And so these are a cute couple. They used to live in the property. They stopped me and told me millions of stories, families. And upon that day, the owner got on the microphone and said, oh, y'all can come back next week. And we're like, word, what? And so we immediately opened for 3 months. Every Saturday, we get thousands of people to come out. This was just some of the response on Instagram. It was just amazing to see what was happening. In the year and a half I've lived in New Orleans, today was the best. We did poetry readings, we did car shows, we did workshops. We tried to activate the space as much as possible. But one thing we did notice, that we had limitations. We only were getting donations, and the owner made us have security and portalets every time we opened. So we were only able to open very limitedly on those Saturdays. And I remember that bus that was outside Project B. And then somebody sent me this image that you're about to see. Not this image. Sometimes you just got to dance. This kid. We found ways to repurpose everything on the property. Okay, it's coming, y'all. It's coming. So somebody sent me this image, right? It's like Exhibit B closing. These two little girls trying to get in. And I remember that bus. So it's like, you know what if we do school tours? So we sent emails to different schools, and we posted it up on Instagram. And immediately, tons of schools started to respond. And we started to do all these school tours in this space, getting young people as young as kindergarten all the way to college to do tours of this space that they knew so well, but seeing it in a brand new way. but not just seeing the art, but also to see that there was history painted on the walls and learning about people who they probably had not experienced in school, getting a chance to meet community organizers like Malik Rahim, who's standing next to his portrait as he talks to the kid. Just learning about narratives in history. Like a lot of the students were like, we don't learn about this. It's them learning about Fred Hampton from Chicago. It was just amazing to be a part of that energy. And then we also challenged them. We said, okay, now you're going to create in this space. So we gave them room to paint in the space. So they repurposed tires that were left there. They painted on the grounds. And they took ownership of the space. Now they were one of the 30 artists that were involved in this project. I'm sorry, this is my first time. Such an emotional... So it was just amazing that they took so much pride in what they were doing. And this all came about with the help of some cool organizers, people that I met, people who wanted to be a part of this building and wanted to be a part of doing something bigger. There's this idea of, this is a teenager wrote, this is one of the greatest experiences in my life. The history within and upon these walls will cause tears to fall from my eyes. This is a big broadcast our reality right in front of me and our faces, and I won't be changing the channel. That was one of the students. So this is a group of volunteers that helped put this all together. We survived off of donations, and we all just put in a lot of time and effort. And then a bunch of business leaders also stepped up and helped. So we had one last day that we said we're going to open to the public, and it was January 19th, MLK Day. And we wanted to close out with a big bang. We sent the press, we sent the word that this is the last time you can experience this magical place. And this day, I promise you, was the best day of my life. We had literally a line of people all the way down the block. Like, we shut down the traffic. Tons of people waiting to get in to see for the last time to see this space. People were in lines to see the work, to see the art, to see just all the different forms of expression, all the different stories. And this was a space that no one wanted to go to before. This was a space that everybody overlooked. This was a space that only was an eyesore to individuals as they drove by. And now this was a space that immediately shut down the city. People compared it to Jazz Fest. This was 10,000 people. We had to close the doors. The police was like, if y'all don't close the doors, we're shutting this down. So we closed the gate, and people were hopping the fence to get in. Literally 10,000 people in this space that was not intended to be ever thought about again. And this taught me a lot. The city gave proclamations to all the artists involved, and these were artists that were on the edge. And I recently read someone describing Keith Haring's work, that artists that turned their edge into the center. And that's what we did with this space. I invited my high school alma mater marching band that was literally up the street to come and perform. It was like a homecoming, like a community vibe. D1 is a rapper, a friend of mine. David Banner, a friend of mine, came through, speak some words. Dead Prez. Oh, you got to turn this my audio right here.
Fake records.
So we had This was amazing because I was playing Dead Prez records as I painted, and I was like, that would be dope if I get them to come. And he was like, nah, ain't gonna happen. Trombone Shorty, Orleans Ave, they performed. It was like a party. Erykah Badu came and closed us out. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, I forgot to say that. Yeah. But it was just a vibe of community, of people coming together from all walks of life, and people still like, I remember that day. Tears flow when you can truly feel what's going on in the present time. We are our ancestors' wildest dream. And it was just this magical moment. New Orleans saying farewell to the wonderful energy that is Exhibit B. What a whimsical, sacred space. So, I know I'm probably close, if not over time. So I'm coming to a close. So Exhibit B happened. It was amazing. It ended. And I was lost. I was like, oh, dang, what do I do now? Like, now I feel more comfortable as an artist. I feel like I understand the responsibility of art. I understand what an artist is supposed to do. So I immediately started doing these other projects in the city to transform space. So this was a abandoned movie theater that I painted to be a wall of peace in one of the most violent communities in New Orleans. We thought, okay, what could we do to project a message of hope? So this is in the middle, once again, an abandoned space in the middle of a thriving community. This was a project with American Express where they wanted to do something that would celebrate small business. So this is a story about me asserting myself as an artist. So American Express said, boom, we want to do a project about small business in New Orleans. They chose a street in New Orleans called Magazine Street, which is a thriving small business street, but majority white business, if not majority, all white businesses. And I was like, you know what, they don't really need the attention. I said, if y'all want me to do this as an artist, I want to do this on this black-owned bookstore. That's the oldest bookstore in the city, and it needs the attention. So here was me in a space where I had to like fight for my voice in the midst of this idea of what it means to be a growing artist. And they agreed, and they let me do it after some words. This was a project that even outside of the corporate world, this was a space where a friend of mine, a musician, had passed because he didn't have access to healthcare. He died from a toothache. Oh. Crazy. And I painted this mural in response to what was happening, and this space immediately became a spot for people to mourn and celebrate, and that's what's happening now. So, the last thing, and this is where we are now. So, Project B, Exhibit B, and now Studio B. So a friend of mine contacts me. Once again, it's a space forgotten. He said, yo, I got this warehouse, and I'm going to demolish it in a year. Nobody wants to renew the lease. So if you want a space to come in and paint, I know you paint large stuff. So I'm like, all right, cool. I went to the space, and I'm like, yo, son, like, I don't want to just paint in here. Like, could I open this up? Like, could we do something in here? And he's like, as long as you don't ask me for anything. So I was like, all right, cool. I won this art fellowship with the Joan Mitchell Foundation, and I had some money to, like, use it on a temporary art project. So immediately I was like, all right, game time, lights on. So we called up the same group of people and said, all right, let's recreate and let's build something out of this space. But this time with a little bit more intention, a little bit more thought. This was the plans. And this would be my first solo show as a visual artist. So now I'm like, okay, I'm a visual artist now. Like, I understand what that means. So I began to recreate this space. And not only am I more comfortable with the calling, but I'm more comfortable with the why, but I'm also more comfortable with the process. So even as a person using spray paint, I feel like what I'm doing now is light years away from what I was doing 3 years ago when I was at Project B. So within this space, the name of the show is Ephemeral Eternal. It's all about the temporary and how it informs the forever. And in this space is a homage to everyone I look up to in history, in the present. And all these projects named B, Project B, Exhibit B, Studio B, it's all about that moment and what it means to just exist, what it means to just say now is important. And this is a crazy moment. I'm sorry, this is the last one I'm going to talk about. So this guy right here, Chairman Fred Hampton, Black Panther Party, Chicago, amazing organizer. You should research him if you don't know who he is. The ability to bring people together of all walks of life was his strength. He was assassinated at the age of 21 while sleeping in his bed next to his pregnant girlfriend. His pregnant girlfriend, that's his son. So years later, I meet him. We become friends. And so this is like a moment for me that was just amazing, because here I am, a painting that I did of his father, celebrating that legacy. And then on the other side is his son, preaching to me, if you will, lecturing me. And just the composition of this photo, I just was like, this moment was just amazing. And that's some of the type of things that were happening in this new space. We were able to really curate and really intentionalize all these moments that I learned within the past couple of years. I think there's a few more slides. And the idea about ephemeral, the temporary, and the eternal, the idea about the role and the responsibility of art. An elder told me a long time ago, he said, art for art's sake is not true. He said, you should do everything you can to challenge that at all times, to challenge the idea that art is just to be done for the sake of art. How can your art speak? How can your art inspire? How can your art uplift? How can your art challenge? And that's what I've been trying to do for these past couple of years. That's what this show is currently doing. We're open 4 days a week in New Orleans, and the response has been amazing. We get tons of not only school tours, but group tours. That's my little muse right there. She's the painting on the outside of the building now. And we opened, once again, the newspaper just likes to run stories about me now. It's crazy. Oh, wait, there's audio on here because this is pretty crazy.
Huge warehouse.
So that's Katie
most
Curry.
of your art is outside, right?
Yeah.
Are you trying to provoke?
So she came and
people or
interviewed me.
try
I thought
to
that was pretty
elicit
dope.
a response with
Because I
your
was
art?
like,
I come from a tradition that says art for
Okay,
art's
you don't have
sake
to
is
play the whole
not
thing.
the reason you do art. Art was always used to communicate, used to educate, used to inspire.
So just the idea of this transition that happened within the last couple of years. Oh, wait, okay, this is another amazing story. Oh, it's coming up. I'm sorry, it's not. So this is when we opened. Tons of people came, which is dope. But it's more than just the fact that people came. Is that these are individuals who would not ordinarily go to art events or art museums or galleries. And somehow this space is bringing those people together. It's we're having conversations about the role and responsibility. We're allowing the space to be used as a community center of sorts. This is the one. Okay. All right, this is the last one I'm going to talk about, I promise. This guy painted Albert Woodfox. Is on the background. If anybody do social justice work, Albert Woodfox was one of the longest cases of being in solitary confinement in this current country's history. 43 years in solitary confinement, 23 hours a day in a cell with no natural light for 43 years. I partnered with Amnesty International a couple years ago, and we did some murals around the city because he was in Angola, which is not too far from New Orleans. We did murals around the city in response to his story to try to get people, because there was always these spikes of attention he would receive over his sentence, and we were in this moment where people were paying attention again, so we wanted to create art around it. This was a mural that I had created of him. So miraculously, he had got out. He was released finally. One day I'm chilling at the warehouse and somebody's like, "You're not going to believe who walked through the door." I'm like, "Who?" He said, "Albert Woodfox." And so he came in, this tiny man with so much power, and we stood there and I gave him a tour of the space. It was like one of the most emotional experiences for me as an artist, to see that I was able to play even a small role and then somehow to be standing next to this individual who I had so much, thought about so much, and it was just amazing. Like, even now, I struggle to find the words. So we continue the idea of doing school tours, this time more intentional with actual curriculum around it, turning most of the artwork into coloring sheets that the students could take with them, and having students from all over, all different backgrounds, and just being able to fully engage. And one of the biggest compliments that I received about this space, there was a young man, we asked him, "What's your favorite piece?" And he pointed to the piece of The Alchemist, and I said, "Why is that your favorite piece?" And he said, "Because it looks like me." And I remembered immediately that's what I was missing when I was in school. When I was in that art school that was teaching me so much about art, I had never had that experience. I never went to a space and I said, "You know what? This looks like me. Like, this is my story," or I can see myself in this space. And so immediately that connected this whole story to me. It was like, now I'm blessed to be able to provide that for individuals who probably wouldn't have had it, like me. So I felt like I was a workout, geez. So that was the last 3 years of my life. Project B, Exhibit B, and now Studio B. And what did I learn from this experience? I learned, like Nina Simone said, it's an artist's duty to reflect the times. I learned, like Paul Robeson said, that artists are the gatekeepers of truth. I learned, like Cornel West said, that a condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. I learned that art for art's sake should always be challenged, should always be rethought. And I also learned that art has amazing power to bring people together, to challenge, to inspire. And now currently in the space, amazing things are happening. I don't know what's going to happen next. We have to leave out in February, and all this stuff is going to be done again. But I know that these moments that are happening currently is teaching me so much, and it's amazing to be present in this moment, to just be. Oh, this is Ava DuVernay, the amazing film director who did Selma. She came by and she was like, I got to talk about this for a second. She was like, "Oh yeah, I'm working on this TV show with Oprah, and I think we want to film in here." She's like, "You ever acted before?" I was like, "Nah." She's like, "Okay, I'm going to send you a script." And so it's like this dope thing. And then we've been having poetry events where elders and young people are able to come together and speak and share ideas. We recently hosted in New Orleans right now. There's a lot of pressure happening with what happened in Baton Rouge with the murder of Alton Sterling. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Did y'all notice that wall back there? So, look, I'm at the last part. I don't want to leave the stage, apparently. This wall right here, this wall was from Project B, right? I get a call months ago, the people who were trying to arrest me from that first project, and they were like, "Yeah, so we're about to demolish the buildings, and we cut out all your walls. Do you want them?" And so now I have all these walls from Project B that are in my space, and we're going to start displaying those in a minute. In response to what happened in Baton Rouge with Alton Sterling, we provided a free workshop where people were able to come and just use art as therapy, making protest signs and making signs of what they hoped would happen as a result of what was going on. We just recently hosted a bike night for peace, where we invited people to bring their bikes and ride around town in the name of peace, and over 300 people with bikes showed up. Yeah, it's been an amazing ride, and it's been a wonderful learning experience, and I'm hoping that somehow through this process you learn something as well. The theme of the whole experience is I am my ancestors' wildest dream. And when you really think about that, it'll give you goosebumps. When you really step into that moment and realize that we all embody the dreams of our ancestors. And somehow within that is a responsibility. Dr. King said, almost always the creative, dedicated minority has made the world a better place. When I read that, I immediately was weight on me that said, you know what, whether you have the power to flex your pencil, your mind, your paintbrush, your body, there was a responsibility that we all have with that. And somehow in this idea of history, the baton was passed to us. And now what are we going to do? So thank you. Appreciate it.